They thought he was just another old man who couldn't afford a thing. Wearing worn-out clothes and driving an old car, he stepped into a luxury dealership only to be mocked, ignored, and eventually kicked out. The staff whispered, rolled their eyes, and treated him like he didn't belong. But what they didn't know was that this poor elderly man was actually a millionaire, and minutes later, he returned, ready to teach them the most humiliating lesson of their lives. What happened next not only stunned the entire showroom, but left those arrogant employees wishing they could turn back time. This is one story you'll want to hear until the very end. It was just another bright afternoon in the heart of the city, where the streets buzzed with the sound of expensive engines, and the air carried that faint mix of coffee, asphalt, and ambition. In the middle of this upscale neighborhood stood one of the most prestigious luxury car dealerships in the state. A place where shiny new models sat under perfect lighting, waiting for the right buyer to step in with confidence, a smile, and a fat checkbook. But this story doesn't start with someone arriving in a limousine, stepping out in a tailored suit with gold cufflinks. No. It starts with an elderly man walking slowly across the dealership's glossy floor, wearing old jeans, a faded jacket, and a baseball cap that looked like it had been through more than a few rainy days. His shoes were scuffed, the kind you might see on someone who had spent years working with their hands, instead of typing away in an office. From the moment he stepped inside, he could feel the stares. Not the kind of warm, welcoming stares that say, "Can we help you find your dream car?" But the kind that quietly judge and measure you based on what you're wearing, what you look like, and what they think you can afford. The sales staff glanced at each other. One young salesperson whispered to another, almost under his breath, but just loud enough for the elderly man to notice. "I think he's lost. Maybe he's looking for the used car lot down the road." They smirked. The man ignored it. He had come here for a reason. He had a deep love for cars, especially the kind that combined engineering excellence with beauty. Today, he wanted to buy himself something special, a reward for decades of hard work. He walked toward a gleaming luxury sports car, the kind that made car enthusiasts stop mid-sentence just to admire its curves. As he leaned in to get a closer look at the interior, a sharply dressed salesman approached, wearing a practiced smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Sir," the salesman said politely, though the tone carried an unmistakable edge, "these vehicles are quite expensive. Are you sure you're in the right place?" The elderly man smiled faintly. "I know exactly where I am. I just want to see this one up close." The salesman hesitated. "Well, these models start at over $200,000. Maybe I can recommend something a bit more practical." Practical. That word hit like a subtle slap. The man had heard it before from people who assumed his worn-out clothes meant he didn't belong in places like this. Still, he kept his calm. "Thank you, but I'd like to take a test drive if possible." The salesman's smile tightened. "I'm sorry, but we reserve test drives for serious buyers only." His eyes glanced down at the man's jacket, as if that alone was proof he wasn't serious. Moments later, the manager was called over. The two exchanged a quick look, and the verdict came swiftly. "Sir, I'm afraid we can't allow you to handle these vehicles unless we know you're able to make such a purchase. We have other customers to attend to." The man stood silently for a moment, then nodded. "I understand." Without raising his voice, without arguing, he simply turned and walked out the door. The sales team relaxed, almost smugly, believing they had just avoided wasting their time. What they didn't know was that within minutes, they would regret that decision more than any they'd made that week, maybe even that year. Just a few blocks away, the elderly man pulled out his phone. He called a private banker he'd worked with for years. In a calm tone, he explained what had just happened. The banker chuckled and said, "Don't worry, I'll take care of it." 20 minutes later, a convoy of black SUVs pulled up outside the dealership. Out stepped the banker, accompanied by an assistant carrying a slim leather briefcase, and right behind them, the same elderly man still in his jeans, jacket, and baseball cap. The staff froze. This wasn't the kind of entrance they were expecting. The banker walked straight to the manager's desk. "My client," he said, gesturing to the elderly man, "would like to purchase one of your most expensive vehicles today. He will be paying in full right now." The room went silent. The manager's face drained of color. The salespeople looked at each other, their earlier smirks replaced with nervous glances. Suddenly, the man they'd brushed off just minutes earlier wasn't someone who looked lost. He was someone who could buy the car of their dreams with a single signature. But the elderly man wasn't finished. He looked at the banker and said, "Actually, I've changed my mind. I'll take my business to another dealership. One where they treat every customer with respect, no matter how they're dressed." And with that, he walked out, this time with his head high and a small, satisfied smile. This story might sound like something from a feel-good movie, but situations like this happen far more often than most people realize. We live in a world where appearances can be deceiving, and sometimes the person you least expect has the most extraordinary story. The elderly man had built his fortune quietly, investing in small businesses, working long hours, and living modestly despite his wealth. He didn't care for flashy watches or designer suits. He cared about quality, craftsmanship, and character. For him, this wasn't about the car anymore. It was about proving a point that judging people based on their appearance is not only unkind, but also a quick way to miss out on incredible opportunities. If the staff had taken just a few minutes to listen, to ask genuine questions, and to treat him as they would any other customer, they could have closed one of the biggest sales of the year. Instead, they let prejudice and assumptions get in the way. Stories like this remind us that respect costs nothing but can mean everything. Whether it's in a car dealership, a restaurant, a store, or even on the street, the way we treat people can leave lasting impressions for better or worse. And sometimes, those moments come back around faster than you think. Before I wrap up, I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. Have you ever been underestimated or judged unfairly because of how you looked or what you wore? Maybe you've seen someone else go through something similar. Share your story in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, make sure to hit that like button. It really helps more people find this content. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel so you never miss a story like this, and tap the notification bell so you're always the first to know when new content drops. And if you think someone you know could use this reminder about not judging a book by its cover, go ahead and share this video with them.